Welcome everybody to Tales from the Tackle Shop. My name's Andy Page, and as always, my co-host is the match ace, Alex Bates.
Match ace. You're bigging me up here for a big fall, ain't you?
No.
You are. Oh dear.
Now, to be honest though, I was thinking about this today as I was sitting there watching my motionless floats not moving, that you have, over the last few weeks, you must have won your section twice, come second once, and won the whole thing once.
Yeah. I've been catching a few fish lately, and hopefully this Sunday I can catch a few more and do a bit for the team. But yeah, I've framed in I think I've had 3 matches out of the main sort of 11 we've had so far, and it's all about team points at the end of the day, Andy, but it's always nice to pick a little bit of money up. And
well, no, you're proving you're just incredibly good on these fen drains. It's brilliant. Anyway, we didn't rehearse that bit, so that was quite cool. Now, tonight we are going to do something completely different. We're going to start dropping in a venue once a month. So we're going to start off tonight, and we thought no better place to start than the River Welland in Spalding. Now, Alex, you did a feature on there last week for Angling Times.
I did, mate, yeah. Week before last, I think it was.
2 weeks ago. You caught 1 or 2 diddlers.
Yeah. Small fish for you, but perfect, pristine red fiends to me.
I was being sarcastic. You had a big bag, didn't you?
Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely full of fish, the town Welland, and we did I think it's in this Tuesday's Angling Times. I think it's 2nd or 3rd of December. It's out, so go and buy that and read all about it. So yeah, I think we're going to talk about rigs and stuff like that. What I would use, hemp fishing, bread. You know, there's people think it's bread, just cup it in and catch a few fish, but there's so many different ways of presenting it and what's right and what's wrong, really. And obviously, the town Welland's a perfect place to start as a venue of choice. Yeah,
it's fishing its head off at the minute, isn't it, for the roach in particular?
Yeah.
There'll be a few perch clonking around, and no doubt if 1 or 2 pike have survived the onslaught, they'll soon be heading on in there. So we're going to look at mainly bread fishing, how you might say you might prepare your hemp and tears as well.
Yeah, just a few rigs, elastics, just little things that I think make quite big differences when you're fishing for bread.
Cool, that'd be interesting. And if we get time, I shall show people how to set up a drop shot rig and the couple of knots that you need to do it effectively. Cool. Right, I think we've got enough bread.
We've got enough bread, mate. Definitely.
We've got enough bread. I think I got a bit excited with the bread front.
I think you thought we was on the town Welland from years ago when it was a ball of chuck, but we'll come back to that a bit later.
I don't think the blender's big enough.
No, it's going to take some hours to get all that into the right shape for feeding anyway.
Could be a few cups of tea.
Yeah.
Right, let's get blending. Right, we are trying to record this visually and with audio at the same time, and this is just not easy, but I reckon we'll be on for an Oscar sooner rather than later. Alex, you're going to explain how you destroyed the Welland a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. Hold on a minute, though. You've got to wait to put the mic under your mouth.
I was pleasure fishing, so that makes a big difference. The feature was for Angling Times, which is out on the 3rd of December, so it's out now. I'm just going to talk a bit about bread fishing, a bit of everything really. I mean, it isn't just liquidising and cupping a ball in and away you go. What I'll do is I'll start off with the Welland as a venue. It's obviously it's a narrow. It's the River Welland. It's narrow. It's shallow. It's one of those venues that can come up. It goes down. It runs left to right. It does a bit of all sorts. It's predominantly roach. There's a few perch in there, but most of the time you'll be targeting with bread and hemp and tears. If you're a fan of tears, I always say tears are for those that can't fish hemp, but everyone's different. I'll start off with rig choice. The particular day that I fished, the Welland was very low. So the first thing I do is set my platform not level with the water, because if it's low, it normally means it's going to come up. So normally about a foot off the water I'll start off. Sometimes that'll come right up 3 foot up. It's an amazing river when it comes up. Normally when it does come up, the fishing isn't quite as good, but then when it does go back down again, it's very good. So that's a critical thing. Decent platform, because it is rocks there. Get nice and comfortable. First thing I do is plumb up down the middle, and on this particular day I had probably 2 foot tops down the middle. That's how low it was. Seen an odd fish move, which you don't normally see on the Town Welland. It's not like other venues where they show themselves. So a simple approach, which was top 3.5 of line, but so I've got a nice decent amount of line because I'm set high. I'm above the fish. I can swing fish in. I had pingy 5s, so number 5 Preston slip through one of my pole rather than through top 3, so it does bottom out quite quick, so you can lift them heavier fish. If it was a bit clearer, I'd probably opt for a lighter, a 4 elastic, just so that when you did hook the fish, they're not splashing on the surface, scaring the other fish in the shoal. And I do tend to use a 4 elastic when I'm hemp fishing as well, which is further across the river, where it's a bit shallower. They are bigger fish, but they're wiser. You know, you hook one, you risk spooking the rest of the shoal. So 4s for that, 5s for down the middle. And if I am bagging and the fish are a little bit bigger, I'd use a 6 Preston just through one section.
I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you not ever use the straight to the flick tip anymore?
We do, but with those, the size of the fish on the Town Welland, they're averaging probably 4 ounce, and some of them are a little bit bigger. And the flick tip's good when you want them out of your swim quick and they're smaller fish, but the fish are just too big for that. You know, you could use power gun, but it's a bit too clonky. It's a bit too overkill at the minute, that. Whereas with elastic, you can strike, set the hook nicely. Not take your time because you're in a fishing match, but you got them under control quite quickly. So you're always thinking of the next bite, whereas you might catch 4 fish real quick on a clunky whip and then sit there for 10 minutes where you've spooked the shoal because you've caught them too quick and, you know, made too much commotion in your peg. There's a time and a place for a whip, and personally the Town Welland I like to short line because they're a little bit bigger fish. You're fishing for them a bit more. It isn't just in, out, in, out, in, out. If you're on lots of small numbers game, then you'd fish a flick tip whip style.
Right, you see, because in my head, obviously I'm going back a long time match fishing, we used to use a flick tip for 4 ounce fish because obviously we just want to get them in and out. But what you're saying now is that actually by using the elastic and teasing them away from your baited area is better than just absolutely hossing them out of the water.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, on all the drains really, Factory Bank's a prime example. It's very shallow and clear across, and you start putting a run of fish together. As soon as you have a better stamp fish and it sort of breaks the surface, your next fish backs off, your next bite's down your peg where the fish have backed off. So little thing, you think you're saving time, but in the long run you're not putting more fish in your net because you're spooking the fish out your swim. So a little tip really. The other key thing, because they are stamp fish, you're using the landing net a lot, and obviously we use barbed hooks. I'll come on to hooks in a second, but you're in and out, and roach have a real habit of throwing the hook in your net. So these new competition nets or signature competition nets from Maver are absolute perfect. Hook doesn't get caught. I mean, you see a lot of anglers trying to use illegal nets in the UK because they're knotted and the hook doesn't get caught. They're light as well, so it doesn't hold too much water. So a decent landing net, not too deep, not too shallow, something you can catch a lot of fish quickly. So that is a critical thing. You think if you're catching, I don't know, 180 fish and 100 of them are netting, how many times your hook gets caught in your landing net saves you a lot of time. So just having the right landing net can make a big difference as well.
Show me that net, because this intrigues me, because over the years, I hand land most of my pike just because I don't want to get the treble stuck in the net and do the old crocodile death roll, because it's a disaster for the fish if that happens. But what I'm noticing is when I go abroad, I notice in Scandinavia and America, they net in muskies. They net them all because they'll get the hooks in their hand if they don't. But they don't get the hooks in the net, and the nets they use over there are so much far superior to ours. And yeah, I can see how this would. It's got that rigidity which will stop the hook from going in it.
Yeah, it has. Yeah, I mean, in Ireland and Holland and places like that, you have to use the knotted nets. You're allowed to use them, so you've got to use them, and it makes a big difference. They're lighter, they go through the water quicker. It just makes sense, and obviously they're legal in this country, and makes a big difference. It does, especially when you're netting a lot of fish. So, yeah. So hooks. Hook wise, if you were bread fishing on a canal, I probably wouldn't use this particular pattern unless you were bagging. If you was fishing a canal, you'd be using a lot smaller hooks and feeding it totally different to how I'm going to explain. The hooks I use are a Hayabusa 128 nickel. A lot of anglers use the black nickels in these, but I tend to use just standard nickel. They stay sharper, and I use a size 19. I don't know if you can see it on the video. It's a weird size. People say 19. Why don't you use a 20 or an 18? But it's just dead right. If you were putting a grain of hemp on or a 5mm bit of bread punch, they're just perfect. And I tie that to 09 stream. Another really good hook length line. 5-inch hook length as well. I don't like to have too long hook lengths with bread because I'm using quite positive droppers. You want to see you bite quickly. Rig wise, I use 012 mainline, so 012 Maver, I think it's Maver Rig Mono it's called. And then the floats I used, because it was very shallow, my heaviest rig was a 0.4. Normally that would be your lighter rig, like if you was at places like March and those, you'd use 0.4. But I set up a 0.4 and a 0.2, both with either one dropper, so a little spread bulk and one dropper, or just a spread bulk on its own. Depending on what the flow was doing, I picked up different rigs to do different jobs. The floats I use are the Drennan SF2s, which are these ones here. I'll show you those, Andy. So there's one for you to look at. They're very good because they come with interchangeable tips, and they're like the wire that doesn't bend. They are really, really good. They fish nice. You can cut the bristles down slightly. I just probably to nick a little bit off there, just helps the float settle. They're just perfect for the job. I mean, I do use these for pinky fishing as well, squat fishing down the middle on your shorter lines on the drains. They're a really good universal float, really. And that body shape, it's very similar to a Colmick Jolly. That sort of teardrop shape, it's perfect for the drains where you've got a little bit of movement, so you can hold back slightly if you need to, or just let it go. So yeah, I've explained hooks. Shotting, I'd pick up when I felt there was smaller fish in my peg. To try and select the bigger stamper fish, I'd use the spread bulk. So I have a 5-inch hook length with a little bulk of shot right above it, and all I'm doing is lowering it straight over where your bread's landed, where you know it's landed, and letting it go, not checking it or anything, just letting it go with the flow. And that works for a certain amount of time. And then some days the bigger fish will come up looking for it, so the one dropper rig is perfect for that. Just a 5mm bit of bread, sometimes 4. I mean, it's critical, it's surprising. Some days you think, oh god, the size of them fish, they're all 4-6 ounce, you must use 6 or 7mm bit of bread. But even a 3 or a 4mm, the smaller, there's always a certain size on the day that'll be better. Normally start on 5mm on Town Welland and then go down to a 4. Very rarely do you go any lower than that, really, to be honest, mate. So that's floats for the bread. We'll talk about hemp fishing on the Welland. There's different ways of feeding and fishing the hemp. Years ago, I think on flowing rivers, you sort of, when you're hemp fishing, you're introducing 5 or 6 grains constantly, just trickling a little bit in and just drawing them into your peg. Whereas on the drains, I think it pays to put a big base in of hemp at the start. Sometimes a few pinkies, March and all the drains, Benwick, you put put hemp long, and just leave it. And I found the only time you really need to feed the hemp is when your peg goes a bit iffy and you start getting weird bites and the fish go a little bit small. Then you can give it sort of 25-30 grains, maybe more of hemp, and they come straight back. Whereas if you were to sometimes put a big pot in, you spook them for the rest of the day. Whereas you put that pot of hemp in at the start and they just feel confident over the top of it. So that's the way I'd feed it, definitely. Again, hook-wise, I'd use the Hayabusa size 19s or an 18 if they were having it. But float-wise, I use a pattern called the Census Basie, and it's a nice short float. So I think you can see that on the camera. Short bristle, so it sets really quick. You can use a back shot with them and just hold against it. They're wire and a hollow bristle, so perfect for a bit of hemp. And I'll just string that out with number 11s or 10 droppers, and normally fish that just off the bottom. Some days you'll catch them better fish just trickling bottom, but that's something you have to play around with on the day and get it right. But the hemp fishing on the Town Welland, when they're on it, they're big fish and all. Some of them are a pound. You know, they really are nice fish on that hemp. So it's worth just nurturing that line for the first couple of hours, and then later on in the match going across when your bread lines are starting to sort of tail off, and nicking some nice hemp fish on that. So that's the hemp. Obviously tears as well. I'm not expert at anything, but I'm not a massive fan on tear fishing. If you get the right hemp, I think you'll do the damage on that. But hooking hemp, there's loads of different ways of hooking hemp. I always get asked this all the time. Pin it. Obviously, you just take the grain of hemp, where it joins the pod of the plant, you just get a pile float like what you've got here, Basie or something like that. Just pop it through. Then you put your hook point through, turn it round so the hook's pierced through, and that will stay on for sometimes 10, 12 fish. A lot of people do like that way, but I find the only flaw in it is getting a good hook hold. You tend to bump fish off and miss bites where the hemp's swiveled round on your hook.
Right, so in my head, you've got where the shell has split. Yeah. You've got the white kernel sticking through. So you've made a hole at the base of that, and are you sticking the hook point back through where the two shells join?
Yeah, so where there's like a little sort of dent in where the seed joins the pod, and that's where you're putting the hole in. Then you're putting your hook through there and then out the side, if you see what I mean. It's hard to explain without obviously seeing, but if you've seen a grain of hemp, you know exactly what I mean. So that's obviously pinning it. The other way, which I prefer, is to, when you're cooking your hemp, obviously just keep checking it. Always soak it 24 hours beforehand. Just before, sort of half hour before you think it's ready, I just take a handful out, and that's what I use for hook. So it's not too split, it's not over split. And what I do is just push it in the top where the white kernel comes out, and I just slightly push it towards, sort of there's like a little groove, and you push it towards that, and the hook just locks in perfectly. So that's the way I like to do it. I mean, if you are bagging, some people say, oh, it might be a bit slow, but my way of seeing it, at the end of the day, you hit more bites and you don't lose as many fish because you got a better hook hold. The other way, which is quite a clever way, is just cut a tiny piece of white elastic or blue, it doesn't really matter, tiny piece, and just put that over your barbie hook and hook it the same way as I've explained. But what happens is that elastic goes in the groove that I was talking about of the split, and it just locks in place, and it's a clever way of doing it. So yeah, give that a go. It's quite a neat little trick.
I take it a pellet bait pan is going to be too clunky. Yeah,
pellet bait ban is too clunky. I think the fish see it. I mean, the fish you're targeting are the ones that are wise. You know, the bigger fish in the shoal. I don't think you'd catch on that.
Right, I've got one more question, because I've got these two floats in front of me, the bread and the hemp floats. You're going to hate what I'm about to say, but I'm thinking, why don't you just use the bread float for hemp fishing?
Well, the bread float is a plastic bristle for a start, and it's a longer bristle. So for down the middle with a bit of bread, You need that little bit longer bristle just to set. Again, it is a wire carbon mix, so it is pretty stable. But the area in the peg that you're targeting the hemp roach is across in the drain, so it's on the far shelf, so it's shallower. So you need something that's similar. Obviously, it's a lighter weight because you're fishing, but a shorter float with a shorter bristle, so it shows you bites. These Basie is a hollow bristle because of the weight of the hemp. With it being hollow, it can withstand the weight. And they're just, without fishing, you can't really appreciate. Every float fishes differently. You can lay this rig in, hold it, and then it'll just cock to the bristle of the hemple, and it'll just carry on going down in one motion. Fish on. They're a lovely little float. I mean, you can use them for squats, pinkies, all sorts, but they're my go-to hemp float for the drains, definitely.
For fishing across.
For
fishing across.
Yeah.
This is not easy trying to get this mic between the pair of us. Right, you're going to cringe when I tell you this bit. So I got a bit of combination today. I did a bit of piking first thing this morning, and then I wanted to try and get one or two decent rudd. So when you say with that bigger float, with the bread float, you just make sure they've got it in their mouths. When I'm after the big rudd, I count to 5. So I've let the float go under, and sometimes I watch the line go in the water from my rod tip. Good 5 seconds, because I'm using a bit of bread flake that is bigger than my thumb. So when you said about that going down the middle, I was thinking of me counting to 5. Yeah, that's finesse.
Yeah, it's a bit clunky. Yeah, I mean, bread. I mean, you obviously wait for it to have it properly. I mean, when I'm bread fishing, I do leave it longer before I strike, because obviously if you miss a bite, you've got to come back in and rebait it. The key thing with bread fishing is, I always find if you start missing bites, it's because your bread's dried out normally, or something's not right with your hook bait, which is the same thing if you was pinky fishing. If you miss a bite, you think, and then you don't check your hook, and you go in and miss another bite, you come back in and your pinky's folded over your barb of the hook, and you're like, And it's the same thing with bread fishing. Different breads do different things. So I always take 2 different types of bread, a sort of a toasty, Warburton's toasty, and then the Warburton standard in a bag. Cut them, get a slice of bread, cut them into 4. People say, why don't you just cut them into halves or whatever? But the reason why I cut them into 4, it forces you into getting rid of, so you use that slice up and then you get another one out of your bag. So your bread's always moist. The other thing, the reason why I might use the medium slice to the thicker sliced is sometimes if you're on smaller fish, one different bread will be better than the other. So every day is different, but by just having 2 different thicknesses of bread can make a big difference. I tend to find for the smaller fish, the toast is quite good because it stays on the hook a bit better where they attack it a bit more. Whereas if you're on the stampier fish, the best way of fishing bread is to the medium sliced, and it goes on your hook, and say if you didn't have a bite, you'd lift it out and it'd look like a bogey on the hook where it's took on the water and absorbed and swollen up. Now that is how you want your hook bread, really. I mean, there's loads of different ways of doing it. Some people put it in the freezer the night before and then microwave it in the morning. But I've found the best way is to take the medium stuff straight out of the bag, cut it into 4s, put it in a microwave tub, which is easy to get at while you're fishing, not up the bank, so you have to keep walking about. So I do that, and then I do microwave the toasty stuff just because it is gooey and tacky. So I just chuck a couple of slices in the microwave, 10-15 seconds, take them out, put them in the tub, and then the moisture inside the tub just keeps it nice and gooey. So yeah, that the other thing I do is years ago the rage was rolled bread. You see people roll it and then steam it and do all that. So what I do is if I am on smaller fish, I just take a bit of my bread, sit on it, carry on fishing, catch another couple of fish or do whatever, and then pull it out again, and then you're left with a nice flat bit of bread. And sometimes if you're on smaller fish, the flatter the bread is better, especially in your punches. So yeah, it's just a little bit of a thought. Different breads do different things, and different hook baits catch different fish.
We had this conversation a couple of weeks ago, and many years ago we had these aluminium punches where you punch into the bread, and then you squeeze the disc flat on your box top.
Right. Yeah, I mean bread punches. What do you remember? What make they were, or
No, but the method was it would be about 4 or 5 mil. You'd
Right.
put it into the bread slice, and then it had a little like a pen top.
yeah,
You press it down and squeeze it flat. So you got a really flat disc, and you just put the hook through the middle of the disc, and it was perfect because then when it went in the water, it would just expand, and you just had this beautiful pellet on your hook.
yeah? I mean, it sounds something like the original Preston bread punches. They used to have like a little pen thing on the top there, and you used to push it out, and then you used to hook it. I mean, they don't make them anymore, and a lot of bread anglers, I know Nuddy and people like that, Winnie, they've all got those punches in their box, and they're like gold dust to get hold of. But the best ones I've found are the standard Drennan ones, the brass head bread punches. Whatever you do, don't drop them in the water because you never get them back. So they're the ones I use, like say 4 or 5 mil. I do have some shallower ones, but the good thing about the Drennan ones, they're nice and deep. So if you have got a thicker sliced bread, you're not compressing it too much. So yeah, I mean, there is times when I'll use a 6 or an 8 mil. Normally, towards the end of the season when I'm at March and there's a few rudd knocking about, sometimes a big wafy bit of bread for a big skimmer or a big rudd can work. But normally 4 and 5 mil are the bread punches I use.
You want a size 10 and pull out half the slice and whack it round there, boy. That will get you a big rud. Fold it in. Right, okay, that was brilliant because that's given people an insight of how to use different floats for different for the hemp and for the bread. Right, shall we crack straight on to different types of ground bait?
Yeah, so punch crumb is a massive thing in the fens. A lot of canal fishing is done with your liquidised bread, nice and fine. Then they freeze it and then riddle it off and blend it again, so it is really fine. On the drains, because we've got a lot of fish, we can be a bit more selective. And the Town Welland is a prime example. There is some better fish in there, and there is some smaller sort of pestery fish in there. So what I do is punch crumb. Always mix it night before. Have to do it. You need an atomizer and you need a decent drill set low. My mix is normally 2 bags of our own Tackle and Baits white crumb. So 2 bags of that to 1 bag of the Census punch crumb. The reason why I add the Census punch crumb is it's freeze dried and it just helps break the original white crumb, so it's not too tacky and too lumpy. So night before, like I say, vaporizer, drill set low, just keep mixing, whisking, and then you think, right, that's okay. Leave it 15 minutes, go back to it, and just keep repeating the process. So you need as much water in it as you can, because the whole idea of the punch crumb is to get down and then to break up. A lot of people think, oh, yeah, punch crumb, I'm done with that. But when you actually squeeze a ball of bread, it goes to the bottom, and then you watch it break down, and it makes quite a big trail. I mean, that's why liquidised bread is so popular, because it spreads over a bigger area. The benefits of punch crumb, obviously, if it's flowing, you can get it down. You can select the right stamp as well. So if you're on lots of small fish, and if you're using your standard liquidised bread, you tend to get lots of bits and pieces, and it, like I say, clouds everywhere, and it attracts the wrong size fish. So you can feed punch crumb 1 squeeze, bit of gravel, which is a key thing for anyone using the bread, whether it be punch crumb or liquidised. Gravel is a must, just to get it through that initial surface tension, and it'll go down, and you know exactly where it is in your peg. Especially on weedy venues. I mean, Town Welland's not too bad, but some venues it's really weedy, and you want to make sure that your ball of bread is exactly where you've plumbed up. So gravel is a real big thing with bread. Centres do a cloudy punch crumb. I've not really done too much, but you'd probably use that more when you were fishing for skimmers. So it's just a bit more active, similar to your liquidised. So I can't really say too much about it, but I know a lot of anglers have used it to good effect. So the cloudy punch crumb. The good thing about punch crumb, once you're finished, chuck it in the freezer, and probably after 2 or 3 times you want to start binning it, because the more you freeze it, the more it deadens it and deactivates it, and selects the right stamp fish, which is is what you do with the ground baits as well. You know, the deader the mix, the bigger the fish normally. And then another day you want a real active mix. So for example, I'd use punch crumb on most of the venues in the fens, but there is certain times and venues and different areas where I'd use liquidized. A lot of anglers use a 50-50 mix. So the reason for that is the punch crumb's got a stickiness to get down, but then the liquidized then breaks the ball up and creates the... So you've got best of both, if you know what I mean. So liquidized bread. Well, Andy's done some, but I wouldn't suggest doing it like Andy's punch crumb. So, yeah, first thing I do, take the crusts off. Some people leave them on. There's not a lot in it really. Just get a chopping board, breadboard, cut all the crusts off, put them in a bag, give them to the birds normally, or I blend them afterwards. And well, I don't know what I do with that to get rid of them, bin them. Liquidize it. You know, leave it in the blender until it's nice and fine. And I chuck it in a bag, and then I put it through a 3mm riddle. I think that's key. 4mm, you still get all the lumps in, but a 3mm riddle really does make it nice and fine. If I was doing it the night before, obviously use it, but what I tend to do is have a big session, get loads and loads of bread in, and just get your head down and get through it, and then store it up in the freezer. So when it comes to it, you've got some. Just take it out, thaw it out, and put it through a riddle again, and it'll be like perfect. Really well.
3mm riddle. We got 4mm there, and you were. Oh, it's 3, is it?
3, yeah. There's a 6 and a 4, but 3mm for bread normally, which is a pinky mesh.
Oh dear. Well, we're gonna blend some of my attempts from last night. When Alex turned up here, his face went white. He said, "What is that?" I said, "That's what I've been using today." So yeah, I've left the crusts on. Got big bits of crust in it and all sorts. But I like to use the crust because obviously I'm going for real clonking rudd, and what I find is the liquidized bread brings in all the little ones, and then I get the bigger fish. You can see them on top. They can actually come up and take the crusts off the top. Sadly today, it wasn't just the rudd that were taking the crusts off the top. It was swans, ducks and seagulls. So I think I'm going to get Alex, I'll keep me for the next 3 hours, to make me loads and loads of liquidized bread through the 3mm riddle. So I've got no more excuses. Right, I think we need to get on with this blender.
Look at this. So we've talked about punch crumb and when I'd use punch crumb. So we're going to talk about liquidized now. So liquidized is genuinely a lot finer than this monstrosity that Andy's made for the ducks. So don't do it like that. I'll show you how we're going to do to get it perfect. Liquidized bread is perfect for when there's not so many small fish about and they're more stampier fish. It's a bit more attractive. So I tend to go for just a liquidized mixed, probably when I'm canal fishing. The town Welland, you can use it, but because it's moving about and the water level's coming up and down all the time, I tend to use the punch crumb because it's heavier and it stays to the bottom. So I'm just going to go through explaining how you prepare the liquidized bread. So like I say, I get a load, 4 or 5 loaves, take all the crusts off, shove it in a blender, make sure it's all set up right, give it a good blend. The key thing is to get as fine as possible. You're never going to get it really fine, but the best you can. You need a decent blender as well. I mean, there's so many pants ones about that don't really cut it. They're just no good. You're wasting your time. So just blend it through. Just take it out, and then what we do then is I put it through a 3mm riddle. I like to use 3mm, it's the right size. 4 is a little bit too coarse, and 6 is definitely. So this is the Blue Peter bit. Here's some I prepared earlier. So I don't know if you can see with the camera, got a real nice fine liquidized. And then what I do is just put sort of 2 or 3 pints in a bag, shove it in the freezer night before, take it out, ready, and then put it back through a riddle again. Sometimes it'll need just atomizing a bit just to rejuvenate it a little bit, and then like I was saying, add a little bit of gravel, more or less depending on the flow. And that's it, really. Simple as that. Simple as that.
Joking apart, my approach for the big rod works, but I am actually going to refine. You've made me think tonight, Alex, and I'm going to refine my approach big time. And yeah, I think I'm going to spend a bit more time on the prep rather than just whacking a few loaves in the blender and just going for it and just see what the difference is. Anyway, right, when you go back to the River Welland, can you just explain to the listeners where on the stretches you will actually fish?
Yeah, so the main stretch where people fish is right in the town, opposite the poacher or the water taxi mooring. The colder it is, the better normally those pegs are. The last couple of years, that's been probably the only place that you could catch fish. Because it's been so wet and the main Welland has been ripping, a lot more fish have gone into the town Welland, which is great because I think you'll catch pretty much anywhere. I mean, I did the feature, which is called near Chainbridge. It's like Greenbridge near. It's sort of halfway between Chainbridge and the Moorings pub. For people that know it, there's like a Chinese restaurant. The parking's not too bad through there. Access is good. It's sort of on the start of the one-way street. So that's a good area at the minute. Even up to Twin Bridges, there's fish being caught. Normally, the further away from the actual epicentre of the town, the fish get a little bit bigger. People have caught back going towards the Coronation. I think there's a little shop there, and there's been £40 bags caught all over, which is really good, really good. I think as the rain sort of eases off and the drain gets clearer, like I say, head for the epicentre in the town. But I think that there may be a few matches over Christmas, so it'll be interesting to see how it fishes on a bigger scale, really. If you was probably looking for the perch, obviously wherever the bait fish are is where the perch are going to be. So yeah, keep it simple, really.
Well, that's right. I mean, talking of predators, particularly the perch, they're going to be where there's loads and loads of the smaller fish, and particularly where the structure as well. So anywhere near the bridges, the stanchions that are supporting the banks, places like that will be ideal places to try for the perch. Now, if you're going for the perch, there's a couple of ways that I'd recommend you do it. You could try little jigs, which might work really, really well, or the in vogue thing that's been in vogue for quite some time now is drop shotting. So we're just going to show you a really simple setup for drop shotting. It's very, very standard approach. If you can go on many YouTube videos, you see the same approach, but it works. It is fantastic how drop shotting does actually attract perch. And what I would say to anyone trying drop shotting is just give it a go. You'll be amazed to the response that you can get from very small perch to some absolute clonkers as well. Right, okay, drop shotting. So, not that I'm a bit tight, but I try and buy really cheap drop shot rods. For the simple reason is, I know sooner or later when I have them on my boat, I'm going to tread on them. So, oh, Alex, Daiwa.
Yeah.
Daiwa. I don't know. Daiwa Ninja.
Yeah.
Very cheap rod, but incredibly light. Does the job, it's perfect. I've got a cheap Shimano on the end. Again, really light reel that matches the rod. The reason why I like this rod, it's got such a light tip. It's a bit like using a very light quiver tip rod, so it's great for drop shotting. How long would you say it is, Alex? About 5 foot?
Yeah.
5 foot, yeah. This rod, it only cost me about 40 quid. Like I said, I have them stashed on a boat, and even though I'm really careful with my gear, if I smash a tip of a £40 rod, it's not the end of the world. If it's a £400 rod, I'm going to cry. So that's why I have fairly cheap drop shot rods. The braid is, I think it's about 0.08. Yeah. So it's about 8 to 10 pound breaking strain. Now that's the key. It needs to be really, really light braid. If you don't have light braid, you're not going to feel half the bites, and also you want to have direct contact to your fluorocarbon. So talking about fluorocarbon, I normally have around about 4 foot of fluorocarbon connected to the braid. Let's just move the stuff around. The fluorocarbon's 0.3. 0.30. In old school, it's about 10 pound breaking strain. Now, really, what you need to learn to do is tie an Albright knot. You want to connect your braid to the fluorocarbon with an Albright knot. Can't show you on the video because it's way too small for us to see. but there's loads of YouTube videos about it. You've got to get good at tying this knot because you need to tie it on the bank when your hands are cold if you snap off. So practice at home, but it's worth getting really good because it's a fantastic knot and it will run through your rings really easily when you're casting and it won't cause you any problems. That's really important. And then there's a special knot, so special it's called the drop shot knot. I'm sure it's got a technical name, but that's really important as well. You want to get your hook at 90 degrees to the fluorocarbon, and there's a little trick involved here. You want to basically pull off about 4 foot of fluorocarbon, tie this knot in the middle of the fluorocarbon, and then basically attach the top end to the braid using your Albright knot. That way you always have the hook pointing the correct way, which is upwards. If you tie your fluorocarbon to your braid first, I can guarantee you'll put your hook on and it'll be the wrong way round. Trust me, because I've done this too many times. Right, Alex, what do you think to my fluorocarbon?
It's a little bit crinkly, mate. I mean, I wouldn't be having that.
Little tip, if you've got crinkly fluorocarbon, I'm just going to get off my chair. If you hold it tight and pull it over your leg, you can rub all the kinks out of it and you'll get it really, really straight. Do not hook yourself in the knee while you're doing this. So you apply a bit of pressure, rub it backwards and forwards. Then it doesn't work with mono, only works with fluorocarbon. Look at that. What do you reckon now?
Yeah. I mean, we do something similar when we're feeder fishing with fluorocarbon. Just stiffens it out and gets your hook bait away from your feeder. So yeah, it's a nice, great little tip, Andy.
Yeah, it's perfect. It works every time. So even if I'm trout fishing with if I'm using buzzers, I always straighten the fluorocarbon out, and it makes a massive difference. Okay, now what we got on there? That's a bit of a clonky old hook for Alex. He's sweating looking at that. That's probably about size 6, I should say. Let's talk weights next. Now, if we're fishing the River Welland, we've got a very short cast. If we've got relatively low flow, I reckon we can get away with a 5 gram weight. 5 grams, 7.5, maximum of 10 if you want a bit of a further cast. The lighter the weight, the more you'll feel when you get the taps from the perch. So you want to try and use as light a weight as possible. Now, all drop shot weights have this very funky little clip, and you just push the line through the clip, put it tight, and it holds the weight in place. And that's very important because you can adjust the length of how far the hook is off the bottom. So sometimes the fish will be 2 foot off the bottom, sometimes there'll be a foot off the bottom. Obviously, like what Alex was fishing last week, he had 2 foot depth. Well, I suggest fishing for perch with slightly more depth, but they might be in that depth if the shoal fish are there. So you've really got to be very accurate with how far off their heads you're going to have your plastics. Right, the last little thing. Alex, what do you reckon to my selection here?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we did a little bit of drop shotting, or tried to do it when we went out on the boat, and they're very, I see you've got some, are they called replicas of fish, are they? I suppose they're light fish. Obviously you got your worm looking one and the ghost looking fish, the one at the front there, but they all look very, very good. I know the one nearest to you, Andy, this one here, that caught us more fish than anything when we was on our secret ocean trip.
Yes, the North Sea. Yeah, these are made by a German company called Kofi. Company called Canal Gratis in Sweden stocked these and sent these to me. They're brilliant little imitations. It's just like a little roach, this one. There's a perch one that I like using as well. And they've got a little lip. And what you do is you just very faintly nick your hook through the lip. It's a bit like lip hooking a maggot. So you've basically just got that plastic just sitting off that hook. And they're great little baits. Other good baits that I've found, particularly this season, Westin do a really nice bloodworm imitation. So again, well, we're not after 2 ounce things. Again, you just nick it like you're hooking a maggot. So that moves fantastically in the water, and it's articulated in many different places. It articulates in many places because it's got lots of little kind of joints is the wrong word, but smaller sections on it which make it move really well. Sometimes you have to really downsize, and we're never going to get this one on video because I don't even know what these are called. But Alex, how would you describe that?
Well, that is the perfect bait that a 6 ounce perch and upwards would probably love to munch on. Just like fry, really, isn't it? Would you say?
Well, yeah, it's a fry imitation. I suppose, really, you're going to be matching the hatch. I suppose that would be summertime, wouldn't it? June, July, August, when the fry, that's 2 centimetres big. Yeah. However, I mean, I was fishing for perch last year. I just nipped down after work just for a couple of hours. I had over 70 odd, and I couldn't get them to take anything apart from this monstrosity. I don't even know what these are called. I've had these a long, long time, and they're such weird looking things, but they actually match the size of the fry that were around this bridge. They're all about, 4 centimetres? And I had a couple of perch and they coughed up the fry that they've been eating, and this thing absolutely nailed them. So you need a variety of different plastics. Some will work, some won't. On any given day, they'll all work to a degree. But it's amazing how they definitely prefer some over others. And like you said, when we went to our secret North Sea location, the little roach pattern seemed to be the one on the day that they wanted. So this is how I would set up for just basic drop shotting. Really light rod, very, very thin braid, the thinnest you can get away with. I would say 10 pound fluorocarbon maximum, really. Nice light weight, the lightest weight you can get away with. And just take a variety of soft plastics with you and see what works on the day. Hopefully everybody found that informative. So I learned certainly some bits and bobs that I can add to how I'm going to prepare bread for my rod fishing. So Alex, that was great. But as always, we're on to the match results. So there's one incredible result this week, which isn't involving yourself, which we'll come to in a bit. But I'm going to step backwards and let you read these out.
Yeah. So I think we ought to start really with the Tid Goat midweek match. Andrew Kilby, or Big Fish Kilby, as he has been known, and he definitely is now, had a fantastic weight. I mean, he had 103.3, and Tid is associated with big weights in the summer of bream, but this catch was 24 tench, and 2 bream just made an appearance at the end, I think, just sneaked in there. But it was his birthday as well, and he was sort of humming and ahhing whether to go and have a nice roach day on the town Welland or go and fish the midweek Tid match, and I bet he's glad he chose the midweek match.
That's an incredible bag of fish.
Yeah, beautiful, isn't it? I mean, they were fished from 2 to 5 pounds, so they're not all peas in the pod, they're all slightly different. I spoke to him about it, and he come in the shop on, I think it was Saturday, he come in the morning, and I said, he said, make sure you get that in the podcast, so we have got it in, don't worry about that.
We couldn't ignore that, 'cause that's quite an incredible catch, but particularly for the time of year.
Yeah, I mean, normally, I haven't heard of £100 a tench, but towards the end of the season, around the end of February, March time, they do shoal up ready for spawning, and you can catch sort of big bags pleasure fishing, but in a match of tench, that's ridiculous, really.
Well, what were they all doing together like that?
Well, I don't know. There's a few people mentioning that the weed cutter was on the far bank and was working back towards them, to maybe that push the fish that way, which could be a pretty valued point, really, especially if he's cutting the weed, and obviously tench and that do live there. But still, fantastic weight of fish, really was. So well done, Andrew Kilby.
That's fantastic.
Must have caught on the big red maggot as always. Yeah, so well done, Andrew. So while we're on Tid, Sunday, your man Pete Emery won Sunday.
Told you he'd win, didn't I? Keep mentioning him.
Yeah. Pete Emery had £8.6. Second was Archie Greenwood. For those that know Archie, there's always a big rain cloud above his head. He looks like he's from Dad's army. Bless him. He had £8.5, and in third spot was Ian Benton with £4.6, and fourth was Simo with £4.1. So Not brilliant weights compared to Wednesday's colossal weight, but still, it's a day's fishing for most on there.
Going back to the Wednesday result, were there any backup weights? Or everything
I
came
think,
from
yeah,
one
there
man?
was £11 Don Green, the old squat man, he had £11. Which is a day's fishing, you know, we're getting a bit carried away with all these big weights on the drains, and £11 still a brilliant weight to win any match. So, yeah, well done. We've got different match results. So from St Neots, it's the President's Cup in Hembrook, which is like a little backwater runs through St Neots. Very narrow, similar to like your Factory Banks and those sort of venues. And Pete McFadden won it with £19. He's had over 400 fish on a whip with Hemp and Pinkies. 3 metre whip, it's not very wide there, so he's had a nice day's fishing. It's one of those venues I think you can catch on bread, you can catch on hemp, because it is in the town. You can do a bit of everything, and it's quite easy access from what I've been told. So it might be worth a day out, get your rig sorted, or somewhere a bit different. Runner up was Mark Dixon with £15 dead. Again, I think he fished groundbait and pinky and a bit of hemp. And third was Armage Howard with £14 too. So decent weights for a small venue, and nice to see a different match group giving some results.
Yeah, that's great. So hopefully we'll hear from St Neots next week as well. That'd be cool to keep them going.
Yeah. We'll see. The Saturday crew were on Beggars Bridge, which is similar to the chain bridge up our end of the 20-foot. The weights weren't quite as big as they can be on there, but Mike Mohan won it with 17.12. Just ahead of 118 John Taylor. I think it's the first one he hasn't won on there, John Taylor, so he's slipping a bit there. He had 16.10, and third was Mel Saggers with 14.10, so still really good weights. So Ramsey boys, again, they have their midweek match at St Mary's. Peg 1 won it again, just getting a bit predictive that, and on Sunday, Peg 1 won it again. So, and Keith didn't draw Peg 1 either time, so that's the only shock there, really. So yeah,
Keith.
Don't show us your teeth. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, sponsored by Colgate. So Ramsey is pretty much the same. We'll talk about Factory Bank, which is obviously the Ramsey water, in a minute. So yeah, there's plenty of fish to be caught. The fish are starting to shoal up a bit more, obviously with it getting a bit cooler in the week and the frosts, but there's still plenty of fish to be caught. So the main match, the big match in the area this weekend, was the East Midlands Winter League practice match, which all the teams get around to run, and it was our turn to run. It's on 4 different venues, so there's a lot of running around and organising and bits and bobs. Normally, one venue takes up all the frames, so we decided to do a continental payout. So a continental payout works as you'll pay the top 4, but the winner of each venue according to the weight order. So for example, this week, Chris Wright fished a lovely match next to the bridge on Chain Bridge. He's had 27.12, I think he had. Sorry, 27.4. So he won the match outright. And then second was James Dracklick, who was a top weight from Factory Bank with 26.14. Damien Green was third, winning March with 19.4. And then Ricky Young was fourth from Benwick with £10.7. So it gives everyone on each venue something to fish for, and just spreads the money out rather than, one section taking all the money.
That's a really good idea. It's a good way of organise. But it must be an absolute headache to organise.
It's not too bad. I mean, excuse me, it's not too bad. We know the venues pretty much.
Who pegs out?
Well, we did a bit between all of us. A couple of us went down in the week and cut some pegs out at Chain Bridge and did some raking, but I still think it's really snaggy. I don't know what sort of weed it is, but it's an absolute nightmare. I think if anyone was walking the bank on the 20-foot on Sunday, they thought every angler had Tourette's, but it was he's pretty horrendous. Get your hook length boxes filled if you draw on the 20-foot this week, definitely.
Well, they were snapping off in it?
Yeah, so it's really weird. I don't know what sort of weed it is. Even like when you're striking and you feel the fish and you're coming up, and then all of a sudden you're straight into a snag. It's It's as if like it's a dead, well, it's a dying off weed that's still sort of high off the
Oh,
bottom.
it's not. Oh, I see.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
like your cabbages and stuff like
Yeah.
that. It's really, really strange.
A bit further along there used to be this. I'm going to use the wrong word. It used to look like kelp.
That's it.
It used to come up to the top and then lay it on the top, and it would be really thick up to about November time.
Yeah, I think that's the problem.
It's not kelp. That's found
yeah,
in
it looks very
Yeah.
similar. I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, it looks very similar, but all in all, the 20-foot fished reasonably well. Not as solid as it has been, which is sometimes a good thing. Like I say, we do get a bit carried away with big weights all the time, but the fish were spread out, smaller fish further away, and then gradually as the day went on, the bigger fish started to move. So Chris Wright was top weight on there with 27.4. John Taylor again, 20-foot expert, always on there, always draws on the 20-foot. He had 25.6, which included a 4.5-pound tench on his pinky rig, so that's a nice. And I think Simon Godfrey was third on there with 18.5 pounds. So there's still fish to be caught, and I think that'll get better next week. I think if the flow stops and you can feed a bit of bait, it'll pick up next week.
I heard on the radio today that it's the 5th wettest September, October, November ever on average for the whole of the UK.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we needed it. We needed a good old flush through. But I've been in several places down out the way where you maggot drowners never get, and the weed growth is incredible.
Yeah.
I've been to 2 places today, and first place I don't bother popping that with dead baits because I just think it's dead. It might as well lay on the bottom. But I have been here because it is really thick with weed. It's incredible. And the second place I went to, it was still up to the surface. I just thought, this is December.
I know.
It's still there.
It's bad. It's bad.
I don't mind it because it's cover, but
obviously, like I was saying, because we've had probably a real wet winter and autumn, other venues thrive from it. So places like Factory Bank, the more rain the better as far as that's concerned. It gets a flush through. It's constantly trickling through. It's got a bit of colour, and the weights on there this week proved it. You know, James won it with 26 pounds. I think Robert Hubbard had 21.8. I had 21.5. There's another 2 or 3 £20. Andy Mead had £20, and that's not the top end was the best end. Don't get me wrong, but there was some stampier fish down by the crash barrier, so that looks pretty good for this week. I think it'll obviously with the cold weather we're expected to have, it'll fine down, but it'll be a real nice match on there.
Yeah,
it really will.
I'll tell you what, as a match angler around the fens, it's unbelievable what is on our doorsteps at the minute. It's brilliant fishing, isn't it? Brilliant silverfish fishing. Yeah, it's
fantastic,
really good.
Fantastic.
Right, Alex, that's been a fantastic evening. Thank you for showing me your little bit tricks of the trade, and hopefully we can get a few videos out on the bread punch, the liquidised bread, hemp and tears, and even my rather ropey looking drop shot rigs. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, not really, Andy. I think just wish the tackle and baits team a bit of luck this week, and because it's going to be a real tight affair on the Winter League front.
Do we not give Pete Emery the Stardust this week and shuffle it across to you guys?
Hopefully, yeah.
Or share it between all of you.
Yeah.
So tactics are just you've got to beat the other the 2 teams. So
it's very, very tight. I think Image are winning the league on 12, and tackle and baits and hot rods are on 13. So, and only 2 out of the 3 can qualify.
So you've got to beat.
There's going to be a good
teams.
team that's going to miss out, and it's one of them. It'll be absolutely gutted for the team that does miss out at the weekend, because all the teams put such hard work and all the hours during the week prepping and team meetings and chats, and it's that's what we live for, the Winter League. So,
but that's what makes it competitions. There's got to be winners. There's got to be losers. So,
yeah.
Good luck, everybody.
Yeah,
but obviously we are slightly biased.
Slightly, just
a little bit.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, Alex, that's been a pleasure. So I'll just wrap this up. This is Tales from the Tackle Shop, a Fenland Fishing TV production.